So we are now being digitized, digitally documented. I'm with Jeff Lowe, the Managing Director of Asian Skies. And Jeff, you guys are obviously some weeks ahead of where we are. I'm speaking from London in the UK. Can you give us some insight into what's happening for you over in Hong Kong at the moment?
Yeah, I think I think we've been through those initial phases of the coronavirus is very much not understood, and we're probably 2 months. Well, I should say I hope we're probably 2 months ahead of you, because hopefully in 2 months, if you're in the same spot where we are here in Hong Kong, your life is pretty much back to normal. When it first hit our shores, of course, I think we went very much through the same thing that, if you will, the UK, Europe, North America is going through at the moment, where, as always, when you have an unknown, and it's an unknown that affects you personally, potentially, and your family and loved ones and everyone else, the reaction probably is to one extreme. And certainly we went that way as well, where, we likewise, hoarding of food and everything else, shelves at the grocery stores being picked clean. You couldn't find a face mask and a sanitizer anywhere in Hong Kong. And so we certainly went through that phase. But, where we are now today is that it's a little bit, as Max and I are kind of calling it, a little bit of a new normal, meaning that life has pretty much gotten back to the normal routine here, where, I don't think people are, we're not practicing the social distancing as much. Yes, everyone is being diligent in regards to their personal hygiene and that of, children and elderly. So yes, we're all still wearing masks, and we're all still much more conscious of making sure we're washing our hands and doing that frequently, and just personal hygiene is front and center with everybody. So that's still all going, but we're all going out. You're going to your favorite restaurant as well. You're doing your dim sum, and people are getting together in groups as well. I mean, again, you're just, my wife is being cautious. We try to avoid areas where there are people packed in. We certainly go to restaurants, but for her, it's like, well, okay, everyone's a little bit too close together. Let's find another place, kind of affair. But otherwise, it's the city's back to sort of normal life. Again, the normal life being that, like you, we're working from home now. Our office is closed. And again, I'm sure one of the questions you'll have is to talk more about that. And so certainly the hope for us is, and the message we're hopefully passing back to people is, hopefully you're in the same spot a couple of months from now. I mean, when it first starts, it's pretty terrifying, if you will. And as always, when there's a new phenomenon, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of information that is available for you to process. How much of it is truth? The internet, the WeChat groups, the WhatsApp groups, and everything, and the rumors that are going around. And, oh, did you hear this happen? Did you hear that happen? So again, a lot of it is of the hysteria is being all fed by just bad news, if you will. But we're kind of through all that at the moment now, and it's fairly calm, and I think everyone's pretty comfortable right now in Hong Kong. So.
From my friends in Hong Kong, getting information about how mindful we need to be about if we fly in now, if we're allowed to fly in, that self-isolation is that's part of the new normal when you're entering a new territory.
Yep.
Which
if you're coming to Hong Kong, you have to do 14 days of self-quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hong Kong government here, to make sure you adhere to that, you get a tracker as well. They will give you a wristband tracker that you have to wear. And again, just to make sure that if in that 14 days you do become, if you are infected, to make sure that they've been able to isolate and track where exactly you went. Again, just if there's a possibility that, you know, you self-quarantine. If you went out and bought groceries quietly at, 11:30 at night one night, and they will know. And so again, just another safeguard to make sure that if you do come in, 14 days quarantine, you are tracked. So if there are any incidents or there is a case where you have contracted the virus, they know exactly where you've been, and they're able to act quickly. So, because again, we're at a space now where we were getting no new infections. But now, just over the last couple of days, we have new infections coming back into the city. And that's primarily, we have a huge exodus of Hong Kong residents leaving Europe, leaving North America, coming back to Hong Kong. And so obviously the concern is those returning individuals could have the virus and don't even know it. And so we need to make sure that if there is something, if there is a case, that we know exactly where it is, and I guess the government and the health authorities can act appropriately.
And how then, because although that sounds, I can see that's pretty restrictive, it also seems to me to open up some possibilities of opening borders. Still, how would you manage, or how are you managing, if you were to have a larger influx of people? And in that, are there any other hotels designated for people to self-isolate? How are you actually practically, how is Hong Kong?
Yeah, I mean, there are.
So Jeff, the positive news is that borders are opening a little bit, although we obviously have big restrictions with travel. How is Hong Kong managing if we had a larger influx of people coming in? How are you self-isolating? How are you getting people to self-isolate? Are there hotels?
Well, I should say we're not opening the borders, all the borders. I mean, yes, I think there are basically 3 points of entry into Hong Kong at the moment. One would be the airport. One would be the crossing from the mainland from Shenzhen, which is the Shenzhen Bay crossing. And then I believe also you could get across on the Macau-Zhuhai Bridge as well. But that's it. There are a lot of other border crossings, but they remain closed. And again, really, it's if there were to be a sudden opening of the floodgates, Hong Kong wouldn't be able to cope with it. So if that's not going to happen for a while. And again, the way the city's coping with it as well, some local hotels have offered up beds and rooms to serve as quarantine facilities for returning people, or people that happen to be in town and need that, but aren't residents and can't go someplace else. So again, if you will, the community is rallying around. whether they were coerced or arm twisted by the government or whatever, I don't know. But I think at the moment, like I said, we've got a pretty good handle on everything here in Hong Kong. If you will, the practices and the behavioral changes that you need to ensure the virus isn't being spread are in place. And certainly one of the things that we talked about was it was a lot easier for the Hong Kong population to adopt those behavioral changes because we've been through SARS, we've been through bird flu, we've been through MERS. I mean, for us, it's a little bit of, we're not new to this. And I think also there is if you've been to Hong Kong, Liz, you know as well, there's a much more ingrained culture regarding personal hygiene as well. My wife and I have very wide diverging differences on this issue. I'm Canadian, and so for me, eating dirt and bark is okay. It's kind of a fair. If the food falls on the floor, the 5-second rule applies. Well, that's still good. Can I have that? Whereas my wife, who's Hong Kong Chinese, she very much comes from a different place where hygiene is one of her high key concerns, and it would have been that way before coronavirus. It's more ingrained in the psyche of the Hong Kong population. So we're just better prepared to deal with the whole thing. And again, but the borders aren't going to be suddenly the gates thrown open and everyone can come back, because the government here and the health authorities are still very concerned about those returning individuals. and everything's under control at the moment. So we have to be careful about how we let people back in and make sure that they do the 14 days quarantine and they are tracked.
And yeah, and I got a photograph from a friend of mine in Hong Kong this morning showing me that the 7-Eleven in the MTR had stacks of loo rolls, stacks of sanitizer. You know, it's those.
Yeah, but again, no shortage. But you know, that's the case now. But 2 months ago, my God, you couldn't find a face mask in the whole city. Yeah. So, but we went through all that, and again, certainly, I would hope part of the conversation we're having now is, I'm sure it all looks pretty scary for if you're in Europe, in your North America, that, you know, I used to kid that, you know, the apocalypse was coming, and but it didn't happen. And as it turned out, with introducing all the safeguards and everything else, you're able to get it under control. And like I said, it's a little bit of a new normal, but it's one that everyone's quite comfortable at the moment. So,
and I think a lot of people, because you're obviously a small business owner yourself, you're part of a small to medium-sized business. How are small businesses in Hong Kong, and larger businesses for that matter, how are people managing when you're having a remote workforce, who are connected virtually? How's that working out?
It's working out okay. I mean, just for me personally, I can say it's a big change. For me, going to work, part of that was getting me in the right mindset to go to work. Okay, and so staying at home. You know, I sent the kids to their rooms so we could have this conversation. Otherwise, they'd be running around behind us, making all kinds of noise and everything else. So, I mean, my desk is now sort of in the living room because that's where I have space. And, you know, a good part of the time, you know, Marcus, Kayla, and Sophie are all here as well because schools are closed too. I mean, same situation, I think, in the UK now, where, you know, schools are closed. So everybody's at home, okay? So we're all trying to coexist together for the first time. And, you know, I'm lucky in that I've had some extra space that I could do that in my living room. Certainly some of the other employees that we have, I mean, they don't have that space. And I mean, even my chairman, he doesn't have an office space, or he did, but then that's now occupied by his new daughter, Marissa. And so his office is gone. And so again, he kind of moves around from cafes during the day. And, you know, we borrow space from friends who've got a conference room. I mean, we make it work, and it's fine. It seems to be okay for the time being, and it seems to be working. Again, the bigger issue is, will that be a long-term change then? Will we ever go back to having a permanent office in Hong Kong? Or will we kind of get to a space where we all still do some work from home, but we have a workspace or a co-workspace with some others, or, you know, a WeWork or something? I mean, I think long-term, some of the ramifications of this whole may be that we go about business differently.
Yeah.
A lot of us, for instance, I mean, if you had asked me a week ago about Zoom, I would have told you I have no idea what you're talking about, Zoom. And yet we're using it every day now. And again, by using it every day, are we finally convincing ourselves that actually it works? And do we really need to have that office with the conference room? Why can't we just go about doing business this way, for instance? So there could be some long-term impacts as well. I mean, I have to say, I mean, it's, you know, certainly the current business situation has affected us greatly. A lot of our employees are from the mainland, so they're stuck up in Shenzhen. I mean, they can't come back down to Hong Kong. Some employees, because of family issues, have moved back to the mainland and left us because of that. You know, we certainly, from a business standpoint, some of the business has not materialized or hasn't come to fruition. We had an aircraft transaction that involved a buyer from Germany, and maybe not too surprisingly, he recently said, "Look, I'm gonna put this on hold, guys." And likewise, we had another transaction that was an American buyer in the entertainment industry as well, and he just went, "Look, guys, I just, you know, my world tour just got canceled. the need for the aircraft, I still want it. I know I'm still going to need it, and things will be different 2 months from now. But today, I just can't go ahead. Again, it all kind of rolls downhill where, for obviously good reasons, everyone's hoarding cash at the moment, which they need to do, but they're not paying us, and so us is not paying them, and them is not paying them, and it just kind of all rolls downhill to where, again, we're at the point where we, you eventually get to us, and we go, well, we're not getting paid, so we have to do something about our overheads as well. And so again, we close the office, and I mean, when I say close the office, I mean close the office. It doesn't exist anymore. We've closed the office in Beijing and Shanghai. Everyone's working from home. We've had to reduce overheads as well. I mean, we're personnel that we thought that we could live without for the time being. They were given a number of options on how maybe they would continue with us under a different kind of remuneration scheme. Some have said that's great. Some have said, look, I'm just gonna try my luck elsewhere. And so again, overheads come down, personnel come down, and again, we're all doing the same thing, trying to make sure that we're as efficient as possible now, as frugal and low cost, if you want, is at the moment, because certainly the revenue side is being, we're having to address that every day because contracts are happening or not happening. And again, a lot of it is the contracts are still there, but they're saying, look, but A-base is canceled, E-base is canceled. So a lot of the people in our industry are going, look, I know I still need the marketing, and I still want to do it. You guys got great publications. That's not the issue, but I don't want to spend it now. Let's talk in the second half of the year, third quarter, when hopefully everything's kind of calmed down, and we could then talk about it then. So.
No, I agree. We're in the same boat. I think not just the aviation industry, but anyone in the aviation industry, which is our field, it's a massive impact. And it's I think what's also important there is what you said about people are personally impacted because we're worried about our loved ones, and right now we're going through the shortages thing, so there's a lot of fear and panic here in Europe.
A lot of people are having to make tough decisions.
Yeah,
very tough decisions, where it's career, it's family, it's where do I live, how do I live, and tough decisions for people all over the world, frankly. I mean, very tough.
Mm-hmm.
Max and I were talking today, and it'll be in the podcast, about other, if you will, large calamities that have affected the globe at times, 9/11, global financial crisis. And the problem with something like SARS and the coronavirus, it does become very personal. I mean, it's something that affects you individually and your family individually. And so, you could look at something like the global financial crisis and the subprime, and you go, well, that it didn't affect me in the end. Yeah, stock market went down. And again, by no means am I trying to minimize the impact of it, but it didn't affect me day to day, or my loved ones, my mom and dad who live in Toronto or whatever. Whereas this is, again, everyone is, my mom's 74. My mom's 84. And certainly, the family's concerned about her. She's down in Mexico. We're trying to get her back to Toronto, but, Air Canada's canceling all their international flights. And so on top of having all that work stuff, you're trying to deal with all this too. So.
Yeah, of course. And that actually ultimately, I think that's, and I do, I wish you well, Jeff. That's a very tough situation, and I hope you manage to resolve that.
Well, and again, recognizing that everyone in some form or some degree is going through the same thing. Everybody.
Exactly. Well, I think, what I'd love to do is to have another conversation with you, maybe in a few days, couple of weeks' time, just talking to people, seeing what we're experiencing. Maybe something will come from these conversations, stuff will start to emerge, how we can figure it out. We're resourceful, we're human beings.
Well, again, very much kind of the message from us here in Hong Kong is that, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. It may not seem like it at the moment. Okay. Because we went through the same thing, the exact same thing, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. For those out there that that don't think they need to be mindful of their personal hygiene and take on some of these new practices, guys, get with the program, okay? I mean, this is what you need to do. And if nothing else, it's just, hey, be respectful of your fellow citizens, okay? Part of wearing a mask is yes, so that you won't get sick, but if you are sick, you won't get other people sick. And again, a lot of people don't even know they have the virus. So a lot of it is, hey guys, get with the program. And if everybody does, that'll make this all much more a shorter term pain. And more quickly will you get a grasp on the virus and start cutting down those new cases that come along. So, but everyone has to kind of pull together in one direction. You know what I mean? So.
Thanks, Jeff.